Hello, my friend. Right now, on this episode of The Flip Side,
I'm going to explain to you why you can't name it and claim it, and why you can't blab it and grab it.
And how to navigate this season that can feel like the great despair.
we're going to talk about faith, how to build it, what it is, and why you need it. Episode 81, The Flip Side, right now. Got two of my all-time favorite thinkers, Christian thinkers. They got frontal lobes that are anointed, people. It's Andrew McCourt from our Granite Bay campus. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing good. Still at home, everybody, but I'm doing good.
The plant behind you is looking really well. And I got James Powell, senior campus pastor from our Adventure campus. James, yes. I heard you preaching yesterday as we're putting the weekends together. You were killing it, my brother. You keeping up the good work over there at Adventure?
Yeah, man. Things are going well at Adventure. They're going well at home. I have two, you call them crumb crunchers, that are ready to get out of the house. But our boss, my wife, Britt, she's keeping us all going. So it's good.
No, we're praying for you with the crumb crunchers. And hey, speaking of Adventure and Granite Bay and all of our campuses, this weekend we're going to be teaching on Hebrews chapter 11. And Andrew, what have we entitled the sermon this weekend?
Hey, we are talking about this because it's defining moments, the need to have a strong faith in strange times, because everyone knows this is probably, for I don't know how many generations, the strangest times we've ever lived in. And it's just going, well, you know what? We say we got a faith, but what is it going to do in these moments? So that's what we're talking about. And no better chapter than the Hall of Fame of Faith Heroes, Hebrews chapter 11.
So usually we do the sermon, then at the flip side, we dig deeper into it. We're kind of getting proactive here on this one because it really is a time to build our faith. You want to know what faith is? We talk about faith. We use the word faith. We build our faith. We pentagram faith. We Instagram faith. We Twitter faith. What in the world is faith? So this flip side, we're going to do a deep dive before the weekend teaching on what the real biblical concept of faith is. And before we do that, I'm just going to ask, I'm going to start with you, James. Why should people right now, in the midst of all the strangeness Andrew just talked about, in the midst of all the press releases, all of the who's got the authority to release the economy, who's got the authority to make us drink fish tank food or whatever it is, why in the world do we need to take a moment and decidedly strengthen religious faith?
Yeah, I think it's key. A lot of the financial terminology right now, you'll hear people talking about it's the greatest dip economically that we've seen since the Great Depression. But then when you look at how they're evaluating our emotional health, relational health, physical health, they're calling it the Great Despair, which is key because it's a great moment to identify what we're actually encountering. And for some of us to give a little bit of identity to the situation. If that's the case, if the government knows that in a Great Depression or in an economic fallout that they need to do something to stimulate the economy, those of us who are following Jesus have to know in this season that we have to stimulate our faith, that we have to build up our hope so that we can move forward. The whole idea of the stimulus package is to get people going back. And the idea of God's hope and faith in us is to get us moving forward.
That's really good. Hey, Andrew, what would you add to that? Why should people be building their faith?
Because we need it at the moment. I think everything else has been shaken. Everything that people had depended upon, Wall Street, their schedule in life. I think for a lot of people, and let's be honest, me included, there was times even in the ministry, and it's sort of like embarrassing to say this, but we got to be honest on the flip side, is that sometimes you live your life, you do your ministry, and sometimes you go, do we really need God? I remember when Francis Chan was preaching recently, he felt he came to that moment in his life and ministry where God was saying to him, hey, Francis, you know what? You got this ministry thing. I'll be over here doing my thing, but you seem okay without me. So you just keep doing your thing. I love you, and you're still my boy. But you know what? I'm going to be over here. And I think that sometimes we get like that in life. And this is a moment not only for pastors, but I think for everyone to go, do I have a real faith when it comes down to it and I'm stripped of my freedom and I'm stripped of my finances? So many people have lost so much money in all of this, apart from Jeff Bezos, who just made another 24 billion. Anyway, but most of us, we're stripped down. We're stripped down. And when we're all stripped down, do we have a faith? And I'm personally looking at myself and going, how do I build that up at this moment in time and actually recalibrate my life? So when I come through this, that I have a new normal and my faith core has been built up.
I had a mentor used to say, there's two types of people. One person, faith is a part of their resume. I'm a business person. I'm a mom. I'm a dad. I'm a faith person. And it's a part of the resume. And there is another person that faith is the core of their being. Now when that is going to be tested. Is it a part of our resume, or is it something that gets us through? I love your phrase, James, the great despair. Now, before we get what faith is biblically, and I want your best theological mind here. I want you to channel your inner NT right here, McCourt. I want to talk about what faith is not, because this is what drives me nuts, guys. I tune on Netflix, Amazon, anything on the TV, and whenever it's a person of faith, it's always an emotional thing. And even when it's portrayed in a kind way or a positive way, the person's like, you know what? I believe in angels because I believe in them with belief sauce. And just right now, my heart is telling me that belief is the way we should believe. And I'm going to be a person of faith. And I'm like, dude, you're not a person of faith. You've got religious heartburn, and it's not how it works at all. It just drives me nuts. What does it mean to be a person? What does it not mean to be a person of faith? Let's get rid of the misconception of what a faith is. James, take a swing at that one.
You know what? I want to go back 2008, I think it was. I was living in South America. I was in Ecuador. And this is not the first time I've been like stay-at-home quarantine type moment. I was living in South America, and I was traveling on the Pan American Highway, walking down the road. And I had three guys jump out.
This is the most exotic illustration ever used on the flip side. You are winning the exotic illustration award. What faith is not multinational? Okay, go, bro.
Well, here's what was interesting about it is I'm on my way from my apartment to my boss's house, and three guys jump out, and I get robbed at gunpoint. And they take my belongings, they take my stuff. I flip out. I take off running. No one helps me. And I get to my boss's house. He's like, you just got to stay indoors the next few days, recoup. You're going to be fine. I stayed in my house for 3 weeks, and I was in there. And here's the thing. I didn't deny what had happened to me. What happened to me was very real. I was afraid to go out. I was like, if I go back out of these doors, am I going to get robbed again? Am I going to face trouble again? There was a lot of fear. In that season, what I had to do is get real about it. Faith to get back out of my apartment was not go, I was never robbed. It wasn't a real gun. They weren't really after me. All those were real factors. I think what faith is not denying reality. You got to be real about it. What we're facing is a real issue, and it causes some real tension and emotions. So I think one of the things we have to do is to say faith is not living in a Pollyanna world.
Being people that point out the problems doesn't mean you're a person of doubt. Doesn't mean you're a person not of faith. Yeah, that's a great misconception. That's that whole theological wing and thinking of going, if I just pretend it's positive, I'm having faith. Yeah. And how can you take a God of truth and add denial to that, and add, that sort of I'm going to hide my eyes from what the reality is going on? It's very good, James. Andrew, help us get rid of some bad faith definition.
Hey, it's that time of the day. I've had enough coffee in me. Let's cut to the chase. In the world of the church, this word of faith stuff is, it's just a nonsense. And I actually believe it's like, it's modern day legalism. It's modern day legalism. Because it's not based on having faith in God. It's based on having faith in my faith and my ability to perform. And in the minutiae of every single thing that I say and think, and if I think hard enough, and if I work hard enough, and if I believe hard enough, it's going to happen. And if I just stick to the formula of faith, do you know what? God's going to go, you did X, Y, Z, boom, it happened. That's not how faith works, because we've taken grace right out of it. And I have seen so many people hurt by this particular heresy, and I'm going to call it, it's not a doctrine, it's a heresy. And what it's actually done is it's robbed the church of faith. So people are actually then scared to believe for anything because it sounds like the name it, claim it, blab it, grab it. And I have tried to walk people through in the past. Let's say this, I try to walk them to freedom. Let me give you an illustration. I remember I was back in Ireland. We had a wonderful family that came to the church. They were originally from Ghana, Africa, amazing people. They loved God with all their heart. But he had cancer, and he was a tremendous spiritual man. But for the sake of his family and for the sake of his friends, he was wanting to hold on. And I remember having to go to hospital. And at that point, they were trying to deny it a little bit. And I put the children gently over to the side. I took mom and dad, and he was lying with an oxygen mask on his face. And I just said, hey, listen to me, brother. God loves you. And outside of a miracle at the moment, he's going to take you home. And heaven is not a punishment. Heaven is the ultimate healing, and it's the ultimate blessing. And you know what? Sometimes it takes faith to let go and let God, a sovereign God, rule and reign. See, when I said those words, she cried with relief. He took off the mask and said, thank you, Pastor Andrew. And do you know what? They were able to enjoy last moments together, fully inform their children of what was going on. And you know what? That brother did pass away. He did pass away, but he didn't pass away through a lack of faith. He passed away with incredible faith that honored his wife, that honored his children, and allowed him to actually go into glory modeling true faith. So my whole thing in this area is we got to redeem faith. In the church today, we got to redeem faith. And you know what, everyone that's listening, we got to start believing for stuff, but not in the wacky. And it's God can only heal us if we've been sick. If we don't acknowledge we're sick, it's not a miracle.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. So simple. You know, the problem is it's a type of, well, first of all, it's works. I have to earn this by the level of faith, the words I use. And then the other thing is it's the type of superstition. And a lot of people that aren't into word faith, positive confession, blab it and grab it and all that nonsense, they still have faith in the realm of superstition. I knew a guy who said, I touch my Bible before I go out and play on my football team because I know God will make me play better if I touch my Bible. Or I didn't say in the name of Jesus at the end of that prayer. And so, you know, even though I had faith in my prayer, I didn't use the right formula at the end. Superstition is immature and it's not faith. Superstition is dependent on you. Paul literally says it's not by wise or persuasive words, but by demonstration of God's power. Miracles are a gift of grace. Answered prayer is a gift of grace. We don't earn them. We receive them. And I've always said, I think there's three false definitions for faith. One is emotionalism. This superstition stuff, it's all in that area of emotionalism. What I feel is faith. I feel things when I have faith, but my feelings are not the faith. Then the other one is not emotionalism, it's eggheadism. In other words, the more theologically sophisticated I am, the more verses that I can memorize, the more theological concepts I can explain, then I'm a person of faith. Well, we all want to grow in our intellectual Christian thinking, right? But your $3 theological words are not moving the hands of God. And then the last one is traditionalism, or empty ritual. The idea that if I wear a robe, I have a candle, I have a liturgy. Is tradition wrong? No. Tradition connects us to our heritage. Is intellectualism wrong? No. Intellectualism grows our Christian mind. Is emotions wrong? No. I want to have passion. But they're not faith. Those are the byproducts of faith and a faithful life. So let me just, all that big setup to ask, I'm going to start with you this time, Andrew. Give me, Hebrews 11, verse 1 right there. Give me your best explanation of what biblical faith is then.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it is so expansive and so good, and there's just so many things happening. I think that what we have, let me try and take you through a few of them, because there's probably, I think about, I think I'm going to guesstimate at least 10 to 15 different types of faith and levels of faith. It's interesting. Romans chapter 12, verse 3 talks about the measure of faith that's given to you. That's very interesting. And I think that we need to be encouraged by that I shouldn't be comparing my faith with your faith. I should just be employing the faith that I have. Because there was a time I was outside of Christ and I didn't have any faith. And then I started with believing faith, just like the first rung of faith. But then I believe that we start moving into the area of what we call growing faith. 2 Thessalonians 1 verse 3, where Paul says to the church, we ought always to give thanks to God for you, brothers, as it is right, because your faith is growing abundantly. And I love that. So it's not about, oh, Curt's got so much faith and I've only got this faith. The big question is Curt growing in his faith? And is Andrew growing in his faith? That's just it. Am I growing? And I want to get to the level of growing abundantly. And an interesting one as well is how Jesus is either impressed with faith or with a lack of faith. Those towns and villages he went with, and it says he couldn't do much in there because of their lack of faith. But then with the Roman centurion, he says, I have never seen anything like this. Guy is from a pagan background, and he has great faith. And I would encourage people with this as well. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it talks about the pneumatica there, the gifts of the Spirit. And one of them is the gift of faith. And I don't think that every single person has the gift of faith. Everyone has a saving faith. Everyone has a believing faith. Everyone should be growing in their faith. But I have to admit, there has been some times in life I have met some people and they have an exceptional ability, whether it be in the miraculous, for growth in a church, for just some things in their lives or their community. I'm going, brother, you know what? I love you, but I don't have that type of faith. That is pretty remarkable. But I'm just going to throw out one more one here, and then straight back to you, Curt, is that I think Jesus understands our measure of faith and meets us there. And there's the incredible passage, Luke 22, where the night when Jesus was going to be betrayed and he was like literally staring down the cross, Peter is promising the world to him. And as we know, he came up short. He goes, Simon, Simon, Peter, Simon. I love that he calls him Simon. He's like back to little guy. He said, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. My goodness. But I have prayed for you. Oh, this is amazing, everybody. Jesus himself, who continues to intercede for us, everybody. I prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. This is important, that your faith may not fail. And I love this little add-on. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. And he was like, what do you mean? You just prayed that the faith wouldn't fail. But when you've turned back, I know you're going to fail. But you know what? Failing is not falling. It's not when my faith falls. It is true failing is when my faith doesn't get up. And Jesus knew that there would be a weakness, and he saw a weakness in his faith, and he said, you're going to have to grow in your faith, but my prayers are going to get you through. You're going to learn from this experience. You're going to bounce back, and your faith is going to grow, and you're going to go on to the point that through this moment, your faith will encourage your brothers in the future. There's a couple of ideas.
Oh my gosh, N.T. Wright would be so proud of you right now. Here's what I heard you say in summary. Faith is so expansive. You could spend your whole life defining what biblical faith is and never reach the end of the riches of what that means to grow in faith, to have a measure of faith, to have a gift of faith, to be sanctified by faith. It just goes on and on and on. James, help us get a handle on it, though. You were talking about an illustration that you didn't get in this weekend's sermon, but it was dynamite. You want to share that with everyone?
How is there anything left to talk about faith after what Andrew just gave us? You know, let me go direct opposite of that, and let's go like to the iPhone. You know, yeah, I think I got to say this. You guys know this about me. I grew up in the church, so 34 years in church. I think this is one of the like most tumultuous topics that I've navigated, and with my friends that are similar age. I think faith sometimes can be this ethereal mist that we're trying to grab hold of. And so I just want to say, for me personally, in my humble opinion, I think faith is the gift God gives us. And sometimes we look at it as a thing he just requires of us, but it's what pulls us forward. It's to benefit us. So the illustration, the way I thought through it this weekend, Andrew had set me up. He was talking about the Apple Maps and how whenever you're wanting to go somewhere, you use Apple Maps. And I began to think about all of the trust or faith or hope I put in this directional guide. What's interesting about it is faith works similar to this map app. You put in your destination, then you get directions. Then I started thinking about what happens after I mess up. Man, there's so many times, let's be honest. I've got the kids in the car. I'm talking to Britt. She's on the phone. The crumb crunchers are going crazy. I'm distracted. When I miss the exit, guess what I don't do? Just throw the phone out the window. No, when I miss the exit, it has this amazing ability that it reroutes me. And that's the cool thing about faith is even in the moments where I feel like I fail it, it reroutes me. But I love this too. Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the substance of things we hope for, but it's not the evidence of what we see.
Yeah.
Especially in this time, there's a lot of things that we see that would almost distract me from what I want to believe. But there is this voice for the believer, God's Spirit in us, that keeps calling us forward, that keeps calling us to a better, more redemptive, renewed, redeemed world. And I think that's, I go back to Siri on this. Whenever I can't look at the directions, the good news is she comes over the intercom and the loudspeaker, turn right in 300 feet. And so daily, I want to check in with God and just say, God, would your Spirit speak a voice of hope into my life? Would it boom so loud in me that when I miss the exit, when I'm distracted about what's going on, the despair around me, let it keep moving me forward to the destination you have for me. So yeah.
So back in the day, before the iPhones, we used to have the TomToms and what was that other?
Garmin.
The Garmin.
Yeah.
And the Garmin would come on and it would say, recalculating.
Yeah.
Recalculating. And this was the number one voice in my car because I'm a horrible driver at direction. Recalculating all the time. I want to read that verse again, James. Here's the NIV version. And I want to tell you right now, this is real world faith, because as I am trying to put the definition of faith out there, I got every single leaf blower and weed eater outside my door coming against us in the name of Jesus. I don't know if you can hear it, but here's the verse. Now, faith is confidence.
Come on.
Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. The context here is the question you got to ask to understand this verse is confidence in what?
Yeah.
And this is 10 chapters of describing how faithful God has been. What is faith? Faith is the anticipation that God will be good again in our future.
Yeah.
That's all that faith is. Faith is me going, based on the past evidence, I don't see it yet, but based on the past evidence, I'm putting my hope in God's character to do the right thing again. We live in a world right now where we need faith more than ever.
Yeah.
Not based on what we're going through right now, not based on the current report, but on what God did when he healed our friend, answered our prayer, provided for those finances, guided the children of Israel, sent his son Jesus Christ, washed our feet, taught us, allowed himself to be crucified and defeated death based on his past actions, micro and macro.
Yeah.
We have hope in the future. And this is what we got to hang on to right now. If we start projecting what could happen if God isn't good, that's the opposite of faith. Instead of projecting this idea, I don't know how he's going to do it or when it'll happen, but I know his character. That's why I do it. Give me one more thing. I'm gonna throw it out to you guys. One more to get you the final word. I'm at home. I agree with everything you're just saying. I'm growing in my faith. I've got a measure of faith. Faith is a gift of grace. I'm not giving into superstitious thinking. I'm anticipating God doing good. But how do I grow my faith in a practical way in a shutdown? I'm going to go to you first, James. Give us a practical tip.
Well, I think what's incredible about Hebrews 11, what follows that whole inspirational message you just gave us, is the details of a lot of people who had gone on before. And so I think if you want to grow in your faith, look back. If I'm going to look forward, I need to look back and go, he's been faithful. And maybe you just started this spiritual journey last week. We saw so many people come to Bayside and faith for the first time at Easter. Listen, if you just started this journey, you may look back and go, I don't have a lot of faith stories. But that's the beauty of the scriptures, is it gives us thousands of years of stories of God's faithfulness, his goodness, that he doesn't leave us in the in-between. He doesn't leave us in strange times. And then get people around you. My wife said something so profound to me the other day. She said, everyone's complaining right now about what's happening. But maybe it's just we've lived through worse and seen God be good in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it's so true. If he was good through all of the other terrible things that we've gone through, he's going to be good again. And so I would just encourage you, have that hope that anchors your soul. And if you need some stories, steal them from the scriptures, steal them from some people around you.
All right, get into that Bible. Andrew, what would you say? Give us some practical. I'm building my faith so I believe that there's a hope in God in the future. What do I do to do that?
I think it's just, this is the moment more than ever that we got to connect with people. And I realize that it's so hard with social distancing. But hey, as I said, Amazon has just made, or the owner has just made a profit of 24 billion. Why? Because people are sending stuff. And we can still be active through texting, through calling, through sending gifts, of just like picking up the phone, doing this, showing your face, just showing that you care. Yesterday in my sermon, and I was talking to one of our girls on staff, Mackenzie Cook. She's one of our single members of staff. And I was saying, what should I say to singles at the moment? And she said, well, one, they need to know they're not alone, because they do have a big family called the church. Keep reaching out. And then for families, you have a bigger family than just the family you have. And you know what? Start reaching out to singles and looking after them. But I read this story, if we just quickly got time for it yesterday. And like, one of my heroes was Charles Haddon Spurgeon. And he was the prince of preachers. Just people debate whether was it him or George Whitefield. I don't know. We didn't hear them. We just got their writings. But Spurgeon was incredible. When he was 19, he moved to the New Park Street pulpit in London. And immediately the church took off. No one had ever heard a preacher like this. And literally thousands started coming along to his church. Well, the word went round the country, went into the media. People started saying, he's a charlatan. He's lightweight. Imagine they called Spurgeon lightweight. That's hilarious. And then they called him a charlatan because he's just getting money from people. And he was under a lot of pressure. And then the big cholera outbreak came globally, and it had killed millions of people, and it arrived in London. And just around the corner from where he pastored was really like the epicenter in England, and over 12,000 people had died of cholera at that point. And Spurgeon moved out of the pulpit into the street and started ministering to the families from his congregation. And they say that he was doing at least one funeral a day, if not multiple funerals a day. And then at one point, he started feeling like he came down with cholera himself, and he was on his knees. And then he got a verse from Psalm 91, and this is from a Baptist, everybody. And he just believed at that moment in time that faith was appropriated, and he felt like healing come into his body, and he was able to continue. That moment became his finest moment, because it wasn't what he did in the pulpit, it's what he did at the bedside. It's what he did at the graveside that really caused people to fall in love with the prince of preachers, who not only preached with the most greatest eloquence about faith, but actually modeled it in a global pandemic. That's ultimately what he was remembered for. So I think there's a great juxtapose at that moment in time. And it's where James goes, like, some say, I have deeds. Okay. Oh, but I have faith. He says, show me your faith without deeds. You can't have it. It goes together.
Yes. You know, we think of faith as this individualistic thing. My faith. Do I have faith? Faith is a contagious communal thing. I get around you guys, my faith grows. I listen to you guys preach. I watch you serve, and I start thinking God is good. And so that's a great word, Andrew. It's not about your faith. It's about our faith.
Yeah.
And live in our faith together. So I really encourage you. Serve someone, reach out to someone, love someone. And by the way, I just want to tell you, we miss you. We miss you. All you regular Flipsiders, man, and you sending in your comments and liking and sharing. I want to tell you, well done. And I really do miss you. We're going to get back in a room when it's safe. Until then, keep sharing this version of the home lockdown flip side, episode 81 this week. Someone needs to grow their faith. Would you just think about who to send this to right now? Like, share, and subscribe. And by the way, do not forget, Wednesday nights we have prayer meetings around Bayside. Check us out on Facebook there. On Thursday nights, we're starting to do some mental health seminars. We're going to do some stuff for parents. There's a lot of great information for you hosts and small group leaders on there. And man, please join us on the weekend, BaysideOnline.com, or download the app and bring someone along with you when you have church online with us too. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on the flip side.